I stood there smiling at my mother's birthday party, holding a champagne flute, when she raised her glass and said, "I'm proud of all my kids, except one." Everyone laughed. I didn't. I just slipped a little white envelope into her glass, and when she saw what floated to the top, she shrieked like she'd seen a ghost. The room went silent. My sister Claire dropped her fork. My brother Michael's mouth hung open, and my mother, she just stared at me with those eyes I knew so well, the ones that had looked through me for 58 years like I was made of glass. "What is this?" she whispered, fishing the wet envelope from her champagne. "Open it," I said, my voice steady as stone. "Read it out loud, Mom. Since you like making announcements about your children." Her hands shook as she peeled it open. Inside was a single photograph, old, yellowed at the edges. The moment she saw it, her face went from white to gray. "I wonder if anyone watching this has ever felt like a ghost in their own family. Tell me what city you're watching from. I need to know I'm not alone in this, because for years I thought I was the only one who could see what was happening. Now let me tell you what happened the day everything fell apart. Actually, no. Let me start earlier. Let me tell you about the daughter who was never supposed to exist. My mother had 4 children: Claire, the doctor; Michael, the lawyer; Daniel, the professor; and me, Rebecca, the disappointment. That's not self-pity talking. That's just fact. While my siblings collected degrees and accolades, I collected rejections. Not because I wasn't smart. I graduated summa cum laude from State College. Not because I wasn't successful. I built a business from nothing and sold it for enough to retire at 45. But because nothing I did was ever the right thing in my mother's eyes. Claire went to Harvard Medical School. Mom threw a party. I got into nursing school. Well, that's practical, I suppose. Michael made partner at his firm. Mom bought a full-page ad in the local paper. I opened my third store location. Retail is so uncertain these days, Rebecca. Daniel published his first academic paper. Mom framed it. I was featured in Forbes 40 Under 40. She forgot to mention it to anyone. But here's the thing about being invisible. You see everything. You hear everything. And eventually, you learn everything. The first crack in the facade came 3 years ago at Daniel's wedding. I was in the bathroom stall at the country club when my mother and Aunt Patricia came in. They didn't know I was there. "You've done so well with them," Patricia said. "3 successful children. You must be so proud." "4," my mother corrected, but her voice was flat. "I have 4 children." "Oh, right, Rebecca. I always forget about her." My mother laughed. Actually laughed. "Sometimes I do too, but then I remember why she's here, and it all makes sense again." Why she's here? What did that mean? I stayed in that stall for 20 minutes, legs cramping, trying to understand what I just heard. When I finally came out, I looked at myself in the mirror and saw what I'd always seen: my father's nose, my mother's eyes, the same stubborn chin that ran through 3 generations of our family photos. But something was off. Something had always been off. The investigation started small. Just me going through old photo albums, looking for, I didn't even know what, evidence that I belonged, proof that I was loved. But what I found was stranger. In every family photo from my childhood, I was positioned slightly apart, not obviously, just an inch or two of extra space. Like someone had placed me there but wasn't quite sure where I fit. In Christmas mornings, birthday parties, family vacations, always that little gap. Then I noticed the dates. Claire was born in 1961, Michael in 1963, Daniel in 1968, and me, 1965. Nothing strange about that, except when I dug deeper, I found something odd. My mother's calendar from 1964, tucked in an old box in the attic. She'd kept everything: doctor's appointments, lunch dates, charity events, but from January to September of 1965, nothing. Not a single entry. No prenatal appointments. No baby shower notes. Nothing. It was like she'd disappeared for 9 months. I confronted my father about it. This was maybe 2 years ago, before his memory started really slipping. We were sitting on his porch, watching the sunset, when I asked him straight out, "Dad, where was Mom in 1965? He got this look, like a door slamming shut behind his eyes. "What do you mean?" "I mean, where was she when she was pregnant with me?" "Home," he said quickly. Too quickly. She was home. "Dad." He wouldn't look at me. This man who'd taught me to fish, who'd walked me down the aisle, who'd held my hand through my divorce, he couldn't look me in the eye. "Some things are better left buried, Rebecca." "What things?" but he just shook his head and went inside. We never talked about it again. 6 months later, the dementia took hold, and now he doesn't remember any of us most days. But sometimes, when he looks at me, I see something flicker, recognition mixed with something else. Guilt, maybe, or fear. The truth came from the last place I expected, Claire. It was 18 months ago. She'd had too much wine at a medical conference in Chicago, and she called me at midnight, crying. Not about work, or her marriage, or our parents. About me. I'm so sorry, she kept saying. Rebecca, I'm so sorry. Claire, what are you talking about? I know why she treats you that way. I've always known. My heart stopped. Known what? About the papers. About the agreement. About why she hiccuped. Why you're here. Claire, you're not making sense. Mom didn't give birth to you. The words hit like ice water. What? She didn't? God, Rebecca, I thought you knew. I thought someone would have told you by now. I'm adopted? No. Claire's voice was so small. No, you're not adopted. You're Dad's. Just not hers. The room spun. That's impossible. I look just like her. You look like Dad's sister, Aunt Catherine. Aunt Catherine, who died when I was 2, who no one ever talked about, whose photos had been removed from every family album. Claire, are you saying? Catherine got pregnant. She wasn't married. It was 1965. You couldn't just be an unwed mother back then. Not in our family. Not with our grandfather being a minister. So Mom, Claire took a shaky breath. Mom pretended to be pregnant. Wore padding. Went away for the summer to rest. And when Catherine had you, they brought you home as theirs. My legs gave out. I slid down the wall, phone pressed to my ear, trying to breathe. But Catherine wanted you back, Claire continued. After a year, she wanted to tell everyone the truth. Take you away, start fresh somewhere. There was a huge fight. Mom said Catherine was being selfish, that you were settled, that it would ruin everything. And then what? Then Catherine died. Car accident. Single car, perfect weather, straight road. Claire's voice was hollow. Rebecca, I don't think it was an accident. I hung up on Claire and threw up. Then I called her back and made her tell me everything. Every detail she'd overheard as a child. Every whispered conversation. Every strange look between our parents when Catherine's name came up. There are papers, Claire said finally. Legal documents. Mom keeps them in her safety deposit box. I saw them once when I was 16, and she needed me to get something for her. An agreement, signed by Catherine, giving up all rights to you. Except what? The date was wrong. It was dated 3 days after Catherine died. My mother had forged a dead woman's signature. My real mother's signature. Why didn't you ever tell me? I asked Claire. Because I was a coward. Because Mom made it clear that if anyone ever found out, it would destroy the family. Because she started crying again. Because I benefited from you being the scapegoat. Every time she was cruel to you, she was kinder to the rest of us. God, Rebecca, I'm so sorry. I hung up and didn't speak to Claire for 6 months. Not because I was angry at her. I was. But that wasn't why. I didn't speak to anyone for 6 months. I just planned. First, I had to get proof. The safety deposit box was at First National, the same bank where my mother had worked as a teller in her 20s, where she knew everyone, where she was treated like royalty. But banks have rules, and I had something my mother didn't know about. A power of attorney from my father, signed 2 years ago when his dementia diagnosis was fresh, and he was still lucid enough to be scared. He'd given it to me, not my mother. Just in case, he'd said, you're the only one I trust to do the right thing. Now I knew why. It took 3 visits to the bank, 2 lawyers, and 1 court order, but I finally got access. The box contained exactly what Claire had described. A single page, supposedly signed by Catherine Marie Whitfield, relinquishing all parental rights to the female infant born June 15, 1965. The signature was shaky, uncertain, nothing like the bold, confident signature on Catherine's college diploma, which I'd found in another box in my parents' attic, and the date, July 2nd, 1965. According to the death certificate I'd pulled from county records, Catherine had died on June 29th. But that wasn't the only thing in the box. There was a birth certificate, my original birth certificate. Mother, Catherine Marie Whitfield. Father, unknown. Unknown. My father, the man I'd called Dad for 58 years, wasn't even my biological father. There was also a letter, sealed, with my name on it. Inside, in handwriting I didn't recognize, were 3 sentences. My darling Rebecca, they say I can't keep you, but I will find a way. You are loved beyond measure. Wait for me. Your real mother, Kay. She'd been planning to come back for me, and 3 days later, she was dead. I hired a private investigator. A good one. Expensive. Worth every penny. He found the police report from Catherine's accident. He found the witness statements, or rather, the lack of them. He found the mechanic's report on her car, which noted that the brake lines were worn, but couldn't determine why a nearly new car would have such wear. He also found something else. Catherine had been seeing someone in secret, a married man, a prominent man, a man whose family would have been ruined if word got out about an illegitimate child. That man was Judge Harold Morrison, president of the country club, golf buddy of my mother's father, and the person who'd officiated the adoption papers 3 days after Catherine died. The investigator found one more thing. A safety deposit box in Catherine's name at a different bank, one my mother didn't know about. Inside was $5,000 cash, a fortune in 1965, and a bus ticket to San Francisco, dated June 30th, 1965. The day after she died, she'd been running, taking me and running, and someone stopped her. I sat on this information for months, not because I didn't know what to do with it, but because I needed to be sure of what I wanted, sure of what justice looked like, sure of who I was. Because here's the thing about finding out your entire life is a lie. It's actually freeing. Every time my mother had looked at me with disappointment, it wasn't because I'd failed, it was because I existed. Every cruel word, every forgotten birthday, every family event where I was sidelined, it all made sense now. I was the evidence of a crime. I was the reminder of what she'd done. I was the child she'd stolen from a dead woman. But I was also the child who'd survived, who'd thrived, despite her, who'd built a life and a business, and a sense of self without her love because I'd never had it to lose. I wasn't the disappointment. I was the proof that blood doesn't make a family, that love can't be forced, and that some secrets are too big to bury. So I waited. I waited for the perfect moment. The moment when the truth would hurt the most, not because I wanted to hurt her, but because I wanted her to feel what I'd felt my whole life. That moment of realization that you don't belong where you thought you did, that the people you trusted have been lying to you, that your entire identity is built on someone else's deception. I waited for her birthday party. She'd planned it for months. The perfect event at the country club. 200 guests. A string quartet. Champagne fountain. Everything my mother loved. Appearances, attention, the illusion of perfection. She'd even hired a videographer to record the speeches. For posterity, she'd said, so future generations can see how loved I am. I wore red, her favorite color, the color she'd never let me wear as a child because it clashed with my complexion. I looked beautiful. I know because when I walked in, my mother actually did a double take. For just a second, I saw something flicker across her face. Recognition, maybe, or fear. Rebecca, she said, air kissing my cheek. How vibrant. Happy birthday, Mom. I handed her a gift. Expensive perfume, perfectly wrapped. Nothing suspicious. Nothing to hint at what was coming. The party unfolded exactly as she'd planned. Speeches from her children, Claire talking about Mom's dedication, Michael praising her strength, Daniel calling her his inspiration. When it was my turn, I stood up, raised my glass, and said, "To secrets and their keepers, may they both rest in peace." My mother's smile tightened, but she raised her glass. Everyone drank. Then came her speech. The birthday girl's moment. She stood at the microphone, radiant in navy blue, diamonds catching the light, and began the performance of her life. I am so blessed, she started, to be surrounded by the people I love most. My wonderful husband, though his health keeps him home tonight. Dad was in memory care. He hadn't recognized any of us in months. My dear friends who've stood by me through everything, and of course my children. She looked at each of my siblings in turn, that maternal pride glowing. Then her eyes skipped over me entirely. I'm proud of all my kids, she said, raising her glass again. Then, with perfect timing, with that little smile that meant she was about to say something cutting but disguised as humor, except one. The room laughed. Of course they did. My mother had always been so funny, so charming, so good at making cruelty look like wit. I stood up, walked straight to her, pulled the envelope from my purse, and dropped it into her champagne glass. What? She fished it out, confused. The room had gone quiet. 200 people watching. Open it, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. It's your birthday present. Her hands shook as she opened the wet envelope. Inside was the photograph, Catherine holding me as a baby, dated June 20th, 1965, 5 days after I was born, 9 days before she died. My mother's face went white, then gray, then a sick green color I'd never seen before. What is this? She whispered. That's my mother, I said, still speaking clearly, calmly. The videographer was still recording. Good, my real mother, Catherine, your sister-in-law, the one who died in a very convenient car accident 3 days before you forged her signature on adoption papers. Gasps rippled through the room. Someone dropped a glass. It shattered on the marble floor. Rebecca, my mother said, her voice sharp now. Dangerous. This is neither the time nor— When would be the time, Mom? When you're dead? When I'm dead? When there's no one left who remembers Catherine at all? I turned to face the room. All those faces I'd known my whole life, my mother's friends, my father's colleagues, the society people who'd watched me grow up on the edges of every family photo. My name is Rebecca, I said, and I'm not Helen Morrison's daughter. I'm the daughter of Catherine Whitfield, who was killed when she tried to take me back. Helen stole me, forged papers, and then spent 58 years punishing me for existing. You're lying, my mother hissed, but her hand was at her throat, grabbing for pearls that weren't there. Am I? I pulled out my phone, connected it to the party's sound system, a feature the DJ had shown me earlier when I'd slipped him $500. Claire's voice filled the room. The conversation from 18 months ago. Every word, every confession, every detail about the forged signature, the date discrepancy, the cover-up. When it finished, the silence was deafening. My mother swayed on her feet. Michael rushed to steady her, but she pushed him away. She was looking at me with naked hatred now. No more pretense. No more performance. You stupid girl, she said. You have no idea what you've done. I've told the truth. The truth? She laughed, bitter and sharp. The truth is that Catherine was a whore who got pregnant by a married man and then tried to blackmail him. The truth is that she would have ruined everything. Our family's reputation, your grandfather's ministry, everything we'd built. The truth is that I saved you from being a bastard raised by a single mother in shame. You killed her. I saved you. Her voice rose to a shriek. I gave you a life, a family, respectability. And this is how you repay me? You gave me nothing but silence and shame. You looked at me every day like I was a burden you had to bear. Because I was, wasn't I? The living evidence of what you'd done. She slapped me. Hard. Right there in front of everyone. I didn't flinch. I'd been waiting for this moment my whole life. The moment when the mask finally came off completely. There's more, I said quietly. The brake lines on Catherine's car. The $5,000 she'd saved to run away with me. The bus ticket to San Francisco. The letter she left saying she'd come back for me. Should I continue? My mother's legs gave out. She collapsed into a chair, suddenly looking every one of her 83 years. You can't prove anything, she whispered. I don't have to prove it in court, just in this room, with all your friends, your children, the people whose opinions you care about more than anything. I looked around at the stunned faces. The people who'll whisper about this for the rest of your life. Claire stood up. It's true. Everything Rebecca's saying is true. I've known for years. We all have, on some level. We were cowards. We let Mom treat Rebecca like she was nothing because it meant she was kinder to us. Claire, my mother gasped. But Claire wasn't done. I'm sorry, Rebecca. I'm so sorry. You deserved better. You deserved the truth. Michael cleared his throat. I found papers years ago when I was helping Dad with his will. Documents about Catherine's death, the investigation that was closed too quickly. The judge who signed off on everything getting a rather large donation to his campaign shortly after. I should have said something. Daniel just stood there, tears streaming down his face. Jesus Christ, Mom. Jesus Christ. The party emptied quickly after that. People mumbling excuses, grabbing coats, fleeing the scene of social destruction. Within 20 minutes, it was just family left. My mother sitting in her chair like a deposed queen. My siblings standing awkwardly, unsure what to do. And me finally visible after 58 years. Get out, my mother said quietly. Get out of my party. Get out of my life. I've been out of your life since the day I was born, I replied. I just didn't know it. I started to leave, then stopped, turned back. You know what the saddest part is? I would have loved you anyway. If you just told me the truth, if you just treated me like I mattered even a little bit, I would have loved you anyway. I would have understood that you were young and scared and trying to protect the family. I would have forgiven you for Catherine, but you couldn't even give me that. You couldn't even pretend to love the child you stole. She looked up at me then, and for just a moment, I saw something crack in her eyes. Not remorse, exactly, but recognition of what she'd lost, what she'd thrown away, what she'd destroyed in the name of reputation and control. Catherine would have ruined you, she said faintly. She was reckless, selfish. She would have raised you wild. Maybe, I said, but she would have loved me, and that would have been enough. I left then, walked out of that country club and never looked back. That was 6 months ago. My mother died last week. Heart attack in her sleep. The funeral was small. Turns out when your life's greatest achievement is revealed to be stealing your sister-in-law's baby, people tend to distance themselves. She left me nothing in her will. I expected that. But my father, in a moment of lucidity before he died 2 months after the party, had already transferred Catherine's share of the family trust to me. The share my mother never knew existed. The share Catherine would have inherited if she'd lived. It's a considerable amount, enough to start a foundation in Catherine's name for single mothers, enough to ensure that no woman ever has to give up her child because of shame or reputation or family pressure. But that's not why I'm telling this story. I'm telling it because I know there are others out there like me, the invisible children, the scapegoats, the ones who never quite fit, who spent their whole lives wondering what they did wrong. You did nothing wrong. You were just born into someone else's lie. The envelope I dropped in my mother's champagne, after she saw the photograph, after the confrontation, after everyone left, I went back for it. It's framed on my desk now, that picture of Catherine holding me. She's looking at the camera with such fierce love, such determination, like she knew she didn't have much time, but was pouring every ounce of love she had into that moment. At the bottom of the photo, barely visible, she'd written something. I had to use a magnifying glass to read it. Rebecca, my warrior, they'll try to tame you. Don't let them. I didn't, Catherine. I didn't let them. And somewhere, somehow, I like to think she knows that her daughter turned out wild after all, wild and free, and absolutely, unapologetically herself. That's the thing about family secrets. They only have power in the dark. Bring them into the light, and they become something else entirely. They become truth. They become freedom. They become the key to understanding not just where you came from, but who you choose to be. My name is Rebecca. I am the daughter of Catherine Marie Whitfield. I was stolen but not broken, silenced but not destroyed. And I am proud of the woman I've become. Even if, especially if she never was.